Well, I mean, Alex, what is the coalition then going to do to actively oppose this? Because it will get up through the House, certainly. But what about in the Senate? And does the coalition here have a bit of a free speech problem? Because, of course, the e-safety commissioner was something that was developed under the Morrison government. What is the coalition going to not just say this is bad, but actually actively campaign against those who say, but you need to do something about misinformation? Because as far as I'm concerned, it's a non-problem. And as plenty of the submissions to the bill said, this is already being managed by voluntary regulation and, platforms and things. You do not need this central minister of truth, whether it is ACMA or the ART or whomever.
Yeah, and it's going to give enormous powers to ACMA, the media authority, in order to set up codes, in order to codify the landscape. So, look, it looks on the surface to be saleable, but ultimately it's not. And look, this came out on Thursday, so your position that the coalition will reach hasn't yet been through the party room and adopted and taken yet. But look, I don't see how we can't oppose this. Frankly, I certainly won't be voting for it. I can tell you that right now. And I know there'll be many others that share my concerns, as they should, because ultimately this will serve as a great big wet blanket over the top of free speech. And I mean, the thing that really stands out about this is how much the left of politics in this country seem to adore this kind of cosmopolitan authoritarianism in 2024. The Greens party of Bob Brown and the Labor Party of Bob Hawke this wouldn't have even reached the minister's table, frankly. This would have been waved off. But we're dealing with a very different beast now. The critical part to this will be the crossbench in the Senate and the Australian Greens, frankly. And the test here is on for the Australian Greens. People have to understand from the left of politics, this might all seem great when you are apparently clamping down on, cookers and whatever other pejorative terms they use. But the pendulum can swing very quickly. And these mechanisms start off as a sword and end up as a shield, or vice versa. So politics should be running a million miles from this if we are to be taken credibly as a free speech country. Already out there, as many of you have probably seen in the social media world, people are saying once again, as they did through the COVID period, what is going on in Australia?
Rita. They are, but I don't think the Greens and the left in general have much to fear, because they know the bureaucracy always sides with them. Yes, it could change, but we're talking about disinformation and lies. And yet this week we had the biological reality bill, which I would have thought every MP could back, because we're talking about biological realities. But of course the Greens and Labor combined to vote against it. And interestingly, there were 4 Liberal senators, Alex, your colleagues, who also voted against this bill. How is that? How do we continuously have Liberal MPs crossing...
And just spell out what the bill was saying?
Well, it's a biological reality bill. It's basically affirming biological realities. You're protecting women's sex-based rights.
There are 2 sexes, men and women. Pauline Hanson put it forward.
This shouldn't be controversial, but you've got Liberal senators who continuously tend to vote against these measures, or in this occasion, they didn't vote against it. They just weren't there to vote for it. They were missing in action.
Yeah, and look, in many cases, people are paired. That's the first thing. So this was actually a bill to amend the Sex Discrimination Act. And of course, as many of your viewers would know, the Sex Discrimination Act was amended in 2013 under the Gillard government in order to remove the definition of man and woman. Wow. Not exactly controversial, I would have thought. And Pauline was seeking to effectively flick the switch back to the 2013 position, which I think is eminently sensible, frankly. And look, that is the question. These are often taken as conscience votes inside the Liberal Party. We have a mechanism to do that whereby people can cross the floor and there isn't, the same sort of collective meltdown that we have in the Labor Party. But ultimately, this is the very nub of why it is that we see the case tickle and giggle, which many people would be familiar with. I mean, the fact that the definition of women is not there inside the legislative framework allows these platforms to be targeted sometimes, by people that say they are transgender or whatever the case may be. So I think it's a very important position. I'm, looking at other ways to adopt a similar sort of approach, and we'll look to talk about that in the near future. But it really does need to be addressed. It's as simple as that. And also, I might say on that,
and of course, Alex,
issue, I think
carry on.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, in relation to the 2013 Sexual Discrimination Act amendments, many people would never have foreseen what came of that down the track 10 years later. The same can be said for combating misinformation and disinformation.
Here, here.
We don't even know where this is going to end up at this stage.
Absolutely. And Alex, you, of course, famously went around asking all those politicians and bureaucrats, what is a woman? And none of them seem to be able to answer it, which proves the point. Can't wait to see you at CPAC, Alex. And in the meantime, please tell the party room that they must not only oppose the misinformation bill, but they must promise to repeal it when you get into government next year.